I'm going to cover a few chapters from Amy Carmichael's 1903 book, Things as They Are, Mission Work in Southern India. Amy Carmichael was a Christian Irish missionary who served in India for over 55 years. She started the Dunavur Christian Fellowship, where she rescued young children from temple prostitution. She built an orphanage for young boys, young girls who were born to former temple prostitutes. She covers her experiences traveling through southern India in the Tirunelveli district in Tamil Nadu. And she also speaks of her ministry and how she actively rescued over 1,000 children. It is a fascinating read. It covers another era. I'm going to read a few chapters that describes the difficulties and the tragedy that was the caste system in India. So I'm going to begin with a chapter titled, The Classes and the Masses. We speak of work done against the force of gravitation. If the magnitude of a force can be estimated in any sense by the resistance which it has to overcome, then verily there is no land under the sun more calculated than India to display the grand forces of God's omnipotent grace. For here it has to face and overcome the combined resistances of the caste system, entrenched heathenism, and deeply subtle philosophies. Praise God, it can and will be done. Thou who alone doest wondrous things, work on. So will we sing and praise thy power. This is the epigraph to this chapter by Reverend T. Walker, who was also based in India. Perhaps it would help towards the better understanding of these letters if we stopped and explained things a little. Some may have been wondering as they read how it is that while the South Indian fields are constantly quoted as among the most fruitful in the world, we seem to be dealing with a class where fruit is very rare and so subject to blighting influences after it has appeared that we hardly like to speak of it till it is ripe and reaped and safe in the heavenly garner. I think it will be easier to understand all this if we view Hindu Tamil South India, with which alone this book deals, from the outside, and let it fall into two divisions, the classes and the masses. There is, of course, the borderline between, crossed over on either side by some who belong to the classes, but are almost of the masses, and by some who belong to the masses, but are almost of the classes. Broadly speaking, however, there is a distinct difference between the two. As to their attitude towards the gospel, the classes and the masses unite. They are wholly indifferent to it. In a paper read at the Student Volunteers Conference in 1900, a South Indian missionary summed up the matter in a comprehensive sentence. Shut in for millenniums by the gigantic wall of the Himalayas on the north and by the impassable ocean on the south, they have lived in seclusion from the rest of the world and have developed social institutions and conceptions of the universe and have right and wrong quite their own. Their own religion and traditionary customs are accepted as sufficiently meeting their needs, and they're not conscious of needing any teaching from foreigners. They will always listen courteously to what we say, and this constitutes an open door for the gospel. But of conscious need and hungering for the gospel, there is little or none. So long as it is only a matter of preaching, there are in the world no more patient listeners than the Hindus. But as soon as a case arises of one of their number abandoning the customs and traditionary worship, all their hostilities are roused, and the whole community feels it is a duty of patriotism to do its utmost to deprive that individual of liberty of action and to defend the vested rights of Hinduism. For the true Hindu is fervently Hindu. His religion may be described as bound up in the bundle of his everyday existence. His intense belief in it and in his caste, which is part of it, gives edge to the blade with which he fights the entrance of a new religion to his home. This new religion he conceives of as something inherently antagonistic to his caste. And as caste is at every point connected with Hinduism, a thing interwoven with it, as if Hinduism were the warp and caste the woof of the fabric of Indian life, we cannot say he is mistaken in regarding Christianity as a foe to be fought if he would continue a caste Hindu. So far, in South Indian religious history, we have no example on a large scale of anything approaching the Brahmo Samaj of the North. In the more conservative South, there is almost no compromise with and little assimilation of the doctrine which makes all men one in Christ. To return to the division, classes and masses, the classes comprise members of what are known as the higher castes. And in speaking of towns and villages where these dwell, and of converts from among them, the prefix caste is sometimes used. Among the classes, we find women of much tenderness of feeling and a culture of their own, but their minds are narrowed by the petty lives they live, lives in many instances bounded by no wider horizon than thoughts concerning their husbands and children and jewels and curries and always their next-door neighbors' squabbles and the gossip of the place. Much of this gossip deals with matters which are not of an elevating character. It takes us years to understand it because most of the conversation is carried out in allusion or innuendo, but it is understood by the children. One of our converts told me that she often prays for power to forget the words she heard and the things she saw and the game she played when she was a little child in her mother's room. The young girls belonging to the higher castes are kept in strict seclusion. During these formative years, they are shut up within the courtyard walls to the dwarfing life within. And as a result, they get dwarfed and lose in resourcefulness and independence of mind, and above all in courage. And this tells terribly in our work, making it so difficult to persuade such a one to think for herself or dare to decide to believe. Such seclusion is not felt as imprisonment. A girl is trained to regard it as the proper thing, and we never find any desire among those so secluded to break bounds and rush out into the free, open air. They do not feel it crammed as we should. It is their custom. It is this custom which makes work among girls exceedingly slow and unresultful. They have to be reached one by one, and it takes many months of teaching before the mind opens enough to understand that it may be free. The reaction of the physical upon the mental is never more clearly illustrated than in such cases. Sometimes it seems as if the mind could not go out beyond the cramping walls. But when it has, by God's illumination, received light enough to see into the darkness of the soul and the glory that waits to shine in on it, conceive of the tremendous upheaval, the shock of finding solid ground sink, as gradually or suddenly the conviction comes upon such a one that if she acts upon this new knowledge, there is no place for her at home. She must give everything up, everything. Do you wonder that few are found willing to follow so far? Do you wonder that our hearts nearly break sometimes as we realize the cost for them? Do you wonder that knowing how each is set as a target for the archer who shoots at souls, we fear to say much about them, lest we should set the targets clearer in his sight? The men and boys of the classes live a more liberal life, and here you find all varying shades of refinement. There is education too, and a great respect for learning and reverence for their classic literature and language, a language so ancient that we find certain Tamil words in the Hebrew scriptures, and so rich that while nearly all the vernaculars of India have been greatly enriched from the Sanskrit, Sanskrit has borrowed from Tamil. Almost every caste village has its own little school, and every town has many where the boys are taught reading, writing, poetry, and mental arithmetic. There is not much education among the masses. Here and there, a man stands out who has fought his way through the ignorance of centuries up into the light of the knowledge of books. Such a man is greatly respected by the whole community. The women have the same kindly nature as the women of the classes, and there is surprising responsiveness sometimes where one would least expect it. We have known a Tamil woman, distinctly of the masses, never secluded in her girlhood, but left to bloom as a wild flower in the field, as sensitive in spirit as any lady born. The people are rough and rustic in their ways, but there are certain laws observed which show a spirit of refinement latent among them. There are customs which compare favorably with the customs of the masses at home. As a whole, they are like the masses of other lands, with good points and bad points in strong relief and just the same souls to be saved. Converts from among the masses, as a general rule, are able to live at home. There is persecution, but they are not turned out of village, street, or house. Often they come in groups, 2 or 3 families together, perhaps, or a whole village, led by its headman, comes over. There is less of the single one-by-one conversion and confession, though there is an increasing number of such, and they are the best we have. It is easy to understand how much more rapidly Christianity spreads under such conditions than among those prevailing among the classes. We see it illustrated over and over again. For example, in a certain high caste Hindu town, some miles distant from our station on the eastern side, a young man heard the gospel preached at an open-air meeting. He believed and confessed in baptism, thus breaking caste and becoming an alien to his own people. He has never been able to live at home since, and so there has been no witness born, no chance to let the life show out the love of God. The men of that household doubtless know something of the truth. They know enough, at least, to make them responsible for refusing it. But what can the women know? Only that the son of the house has disgraced his house and name, only that he has destroyed his caste and broken his mother's heart. Shame upon him, they cry with one voice, and curses on the cause of the shame, the way of Jesus Christ. It is useless to say they are merely women and do not count. They do count. Their influence counts for a very great deal. Theoretically, women in India are nothing where religion is concerned. Practically, they are the heart of the Hindu religion, as the men are its sinew and brain. There has never been a convert in that town since that young man was banished from it, outcasted by his caste. But in a village only a few miles from that town, a heathen lad believed and was baptized and returned home, not so welcome as before, but not considered too defiled to be reckoned a son of the household still. His father is dead, his mother is a bitter opponent, but his brother has come since, and within a stone's throw another, and so it goes on. The life has a chance to tell. Almost every time we have gone to that village, we have found some ready for baptism, and though none of the mothers have been won, they witnessed the change in the life of their sons. "My boy's heart is as white as milk now," said one, who had stood by and seen that boy tied up and flogged for Christ's sake. "They rarely change their religion, these staunch old souls. Let me go where my husband is." "He would have none of it," said one, "and nothing seems to move them. But they let their boys live at home, and perhaps even yet the love will break down their resistance. They're giving it a chance." I think this one illustration explains more than many words with the difference between work among the classes and the masses, and why does that one form of work is so much more fruitful than the other. The masses must not be understood as a vast, casteless mass, outcasted by the classes, for the caste system runs down to the very lowest stratum. But their caste rules allow of freer intercourse with others. We may visit in their houses more freely, enter more freely into thoughts, share more freely in the interests of their lives. We are less outside, as it were. But the main difference between the one set of people and the other lies deeper. It is a difference underground. It works out, however, into something all can see. Among the masses, mass movements are of common occurrence. Among the classes, with rare exceptions, each one must come out alone. This is often forgotten by observers of the Indian field from the home side. There are parts of that field where the laborers seem to be always binding up sheaves and singing harvest songs. And from other parts come fewer songs, for the sheaves are fewer there. Or it may be there are none at all, only a few poor ears of corn. And they had to be gathered one by one, and they do not show in the field. The creed chasm. I have had to deal in the same afternoon's work, on the one hand with men of keen powers of intellect, whose subtle reasoning made one look to the foundations of one's own faith, and on the other hand with ignorant crowds, whose conception of sin was that of a cubit measure, and to whom the terms faith and love were as absolutely unknown as though they had been born and bred in some undeveloped race of anthropoids. This is the epigraph from Reverend T. Walker, again based in India. In writing about the classes and the masses of South India, one great difference which does not exist at home should be explained. In England, a prince and a peasant may be divided by outward things, social position, style of life, and the duty of life. But in all inward things, they may be one in faith, one in purpose, one in hope. The difference which divides them is only accidental, external, and the peasant, perhaps being in advance of the prince in these verities of existence, may be regarded by the prince as nobler than himself. There is no spiritual chasm between them. It is the same in the realm of scholarship. All true Christians, however learned or however unlearned, hold one and the same faith. But in India, it is not so. The scholar would smile at the faith of the simple villagers. He would even teach them to believe that which he did not believe himself, holding that it was more suitable for them. And he would marvel at your ignorance if you confounded his creed with theirs, and yet in name both he and they are Hindus. Sir Monier Williams explains the existence of this difference by describing the receptivity and all-comprehensiveness of Hinduism. It has something to offer which is suited to all minds. Its very strength lies in its infinite adaptability to the infinite diversity of human characters and human tendencies. It has its highly spiritual and abstract side, suited to the metaphysical philosopher, its practical and concrete side, suited to the man of affairs and the man of the world, its aesthetic and ceremonial side, suited to the man of poetic feeling and imagination, its quiescent and contemplative side, suited to the man of peace and lover of seclusion. Nay, it holds out the right hand of brotherhood to nature worshippers, demon worshippers, animal worshippers, tree worshippers, fetish worshippers. It does not scruple to permit the most grotesque forms of idolatry and the most degrading varieties of superstition. And it is to this latter fact that yet another remarkable peculiarity of Hinduism is mainly due, namely, that in no other system of the world is the chasm more vast which separates the religion of the higher cultured and thoughtful classes from that of the lower, uncultured, and unthinking masses. Naturally, therefore, work among them is different. One almost needs a different vocabulary for each, and certainly one needs a different set of ideas. I remember how in one afternoon's work we saw the two types most perfectly. In thinking of it, it is as if one saw again the quiet face of the old scholar against a background of confusion, the clear, calm features carved as in ivory and set with a light upon it, chaotic darkness behind. We were visiting his wife when he came out from the inner room and asked if he might talk with us. Usually to such a question I say no. We have come to the women who are far the more needy. The men can easily hear if they will. But he was such an old man, I felt I could not refuse, so he began to tell me what he held as truth, which was in brief that there are two sets of attachment, one outer, one inner. That deliverance from these and from self, the ego, which regards itself as the doer, constitutes holiness. That is, that one must be completely disentangled and completely selfless. This attained, the next is bliss, which is progressive. First comes existence in the same place as God. Second, nearness to God. Third, likeness to God. Fourth, identity with God. Then he quoted from a classic beloved by all the old Tamil school, stanza after stanza, to prove the truth of the above, ending with one which Dr. Pope has thus translated. Cling thou to that which he to whom not clings hath bid thee cling. Cling to that bond to get thee free from every clinging thing. He knew Sanskrit and read me strange sounding passages from a huge ancient book, and then in return for a booklet, he gave me one of Mrs. Besant's translations from the Bhagavad Gita. The talk ended in my quoting what he could not deny was the true heart cry of one of his greatest poets. I know nothing, nothing. I'm in darkness. Lord, is there no light for me? And another from the poem he had quoted, which asked the question, what is the use of knowledge, mere knowledge, if one does not draw near to the all-knowing, all-pure one? And this led into what he would not listen to at first, a little reading from the Book of Books, before whose light even these wonderful books pale as tapers in clear sunshine. The marvel of our Bible never shows more marvelous than at such times. When you see it in deed and in truth, the sword of the Spirit, and it cuts. The old man asked me to come again, and I did, as the Iyer was away. He often got out of my depth, and I longed to know more, but I always found the Bible had the very word he needed, if he would only take it. So far as I know, he did not, and I left him to quote his own words, though not spoken of himself, alas, bewildered by numerous thoughts meshed in the web of delusion. As we left our old scholar, we came upon a thing wholly foolish and brainless, animalism in force. It was the difference between the classes and the masses, once for all painted in glare. A huge procession was tearing along the streets and roads with all the usual uproar. They stopped when they got to a big thorn bush, and they danced round it, carrying their idols raised on platforms and borne by 2 or 3 dozen to each. We passed, singing as hard as ever we could, "Victory to Jesus' name, victory!" And when we got rather out of the stream, stopped and sang most vigorously till quite a little crowd gathered and we had a chance to witness. It was dark, and the flaming torches lit up the wildest, most barbaric bit of heathenism I have seen for a long time. The great black moving mass seemed like some hellish sea which had burst its bounds, and the hundreds of red fire torches moving up and down upon it like lights in infernal fishermen's boats, luring lost souls to their doom. As we waited and spoke to those who would hear, a sudden rush from the center of things warned us to go, but before we could get out of the way, a rough lad with a thorn branch torch stuck it right into the bandy and all but set fire to us. He ran on with a laugh, and another followed with an idol. A hideous creature, red and white, which he also pushed in upon us. Our bullocks trotted as fast as they could, and we soon got out of it all. And looking back, saw the great square of the Devil Temple blazing with torches and firebrands, and heard the drummings and clangings and yells which announced the arrival of the procession. All that night the riotous drumming continued, and as one lay awake and listened, one pictured the old scholar sitting in the cool night air on his veranda, reading his ancient palm leaf books by the light of the little lamp in the niche of his cottage wall. Chapter 11. Caste viewed as a doer. Epigraph from Alexander Mackay from Africa. It is matter for a special notice that in every department of applied science we have to deal with the unseen. All forces, whether in physics, mechanics, or electricity, are invisible. The division of the Tamil people, over 15 million strong, into classes and masses, though convenient and simple, is far too simple to be of value in giving an accurate idea of the matter as it is understood from within. As we said, it is only an outside view of things. A study of caste from an Indian point of view is a study from which you rise bewildered. What is caste? What is electricity? Lord Kelvin said on the occasion of his jubilee that he knew no more of electric and magnetic force than he knew and tried to teach his students of natural philosophy 50 years ago in his first session as professor. We know that electricity exists. We are conscious of its presence in the phenomena of light, heat, sound, but we do not know what it is. Nothing could more perfectly illustrate caste. You cannot live long in a conservative part of India, in close contact with its people, without being conscious of its presence. If you come into conflict with it, it manifests itself in a flash of opposition, hot rage of persecution, the roar of the tumult of the crowd. But try to define it and you find you cannot do it. It is not merely birth, class, a code of rules, though it includes all these. It is a force, an energy, there is spirit in it, essence, hidden as the invisible essence, which we call electricity. Look at what it does. A few months ago, a boy of 12 resolved to be Christian. His clan, 8,000 strong, were enraged. There was a riot in the streets. In one house, the poison cup was ready. Better death than loss of caste. In another town, a boy took his stand and was baptized, thus crossing the line that divides secret belief from open confession. His caste men got hold of him afterwards. Next time he was seen, he was a raving lunatic. The caste was avenged. It may be someone will wonder if these things are confined to one part of the field. So I quote from another, working in a neighboring field, Tamil but not ours. She tells of a poor, low-caste woman who learned in her home and believed. Her husband also believed and both thought of becoming Christians. The village soothsayer warned them that their father's God would be angry. They did not heed him but went on, and suddenly their baby died. This was too much for their faith then, and they both went back to idolatry. A few years afterwards, their eldest child began to learn to read, and the mother's faith revived. The soothsayer and her husband reminded her of the infant's fate, but she was brave and let her child learn. Then her cow suddenly died. Did we not tell you so? They said, and for the moment she was staggered, but she rallied and only became more earnest in faith. So the soothsayer threatened worse. Then a caste meeting was called to determine what could be done with this woman. The husband attended the meeting and was treated to some rice and curry before he reached home. He was taken violently ill, and in 3 days he died. The relatives denounced the woman as the cause of her husband's death, took her only son from her, and entreated her to return to her father's gods before they should all be annihilated. They gave her 2 weeks to fast and mourn for her husband. Then, finding her mind as firmly fixed on Christ as before, they sent her to Burma. This happened recently. It is told without any effort to appeal to the sympathies of anyone, simply as a fact, a witness, every line of it to the power of caste as a doer. But there is something in the tale, told so terribly quietly, that makes one's heart burn with indignation at the unrelenting cruelty which would hound a poor woman down and send her, bereft of all she loved, into exile, such as a foreign land would be to one who knew only her own little village. And when you remember the caste was low, which they took such infinite pains to guard, you can judge perhaps what the hate would be, the concentration of scorn and hate if the caste were higher or high. But look at caste in another way, in its power in the commonplace phases of life. For example, take a kitchen and cooking and see how caste rules there. Her cooking is not vulgar work or infra dig. In any sense, in India, all caste women in good orthodox Hindu families either do their own or superintend the doing of it by younger members of the same family or servants of the same caste. We Europeans cannot understand the extent to which culinary operations may be associated with religion. The kitchen in every Indian household is a kind of sanctuary or holy ground. The mere glance of a man of inferior caste makes the greatest delicacies uneatable. And if such a glance happens to fall on the family supplies during the cooking operations, when the ceremonial purity of the water used is a matter of almost life and death to every member of the household, the whole repast has to be thrown away as if poisoned. The family is for that day dinnerless. Food thus contaminated would, if eaten, communicate a taint to the souls as well as bodies of the eaters, a taint which could only be removed by long and painful expiation. Thus far, Sir Monier Williams, quoted as a greater authority than any mere missionary, think of the defilement which would be contracted if a member of the household who had broken caste in baptism took any part in the cooking. It would never be allowed. Such a woman could take no share in the family life. Her presence, her shadow, above all her touch, would be simply pollution. Therefore, and for many other reasons, her life at home is impossible, and the Hindu, without arguing about it, regards it as impossible. It does not enter into the scheme of life as laid down by the rules of his caste. He never, if he is orthodox, contemplates it for a moment as a thing to be even desired. Cooking and kitchen work may seem small, though it would not be easy for even the greatest to live without reference to it. So let us look out on the world of trade and see caste again as a doer there. If a merchant becomes a Christian, no one will buy his goods. If he is a weaver, no one will buy his cloth. If he is a dyer, no one will buy his thread. If he is a jeweler, no one will employ him. If it is remembered that every particular occupation in life represents a particular caste, it will be easily understood how matters are complicated where converts from the great trades unions are concerned. Hence the need of industrial missions and the fact that they exist. A man wants to become a Christian, say, from the blacksmith or carpenter caste. As a Christian, he loses his trade and he has been trained to no other. His forefathers worked in iron or wood and he cannot attempt to learn other work. Let the Christians employ him, you say. Some do, but the question involves other questions far too involved for discussion here. And even if we discussed it, we should probably end where we began, facing a practical problem which no one can hope to solve while caste is what it is. Just now, the system is in full operation in the case of a lad of the brass worker caste. He's a thoughtful boy, and he has come to the conclusion that Christianity is the true religion. He would like to be a Christian. If the conditions were a little easier, he would be enrolled as an inquirer tomorrow. But here is the difficulty. His father is not strong. His mother and little sisters and brothers are his care. If he were a Christian, he could not support them. No one would sell him brass. No one would buy the vessels he makes. He knows only his inherited trade. He can make fine water pots, lamps, vases, and vessels of all sorts, nothing else. He's too old to learn any other trade. But supposing such an arrangement could be made, who would support the family in the meantime? Perhaps we might do it. We certainly could not let them starve. But it would not do to tell him so or to hold out hopes of earthly help till we know beyond a doubt that he is true. This is what is holding him back. He reads over and over again, "He that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me." And then he looks at his father and mother and the little children and he reads the verse again and he looks at them again. It is too hard. It is easy enough to tell him that God would take care of them if he obeys. We do tell him so, but can we wonder at the boy for hesitating to take a step which will, so far as he can see, take house and food and all they need from his mother and those little children? These are some of the things which make work in India what is simply called difficult. We do not want to exaggerate. We know all lands have their difficulties. But when being a Christian means all this over and above what it means elsewhere, then the bonds which bind souls are visibly strengthened, and the work can never be described as other than very difficult. Or take the power of caste in another direction. Its callous cruelty. I give one illustration from last year's life. I was visiting in the house where the old lady lives upon whom the afflatus fell. The first time we went there, we saw a little lad of 3 or 4 who seemed to be suffering with his eyes. He lay in a swinging bag hung from the roof and cried piteously all the time we were there. Now 2 months afterwards, there he lay crying still. Only his cries were so weary he had hardly strength to cry. They lifted him out. I should not have known the child, the pretty face drawn and full of pain, the little hands pressed over the burning eyes. Only one who has had it knows the agony of ophthalmia. They told me he had not slept, not even the measure of a rapeseed. For 3 months, night and day he cried and cried, but he does not make much noise now. They added, he couldn't, poor little lad. I begged them to take him to the hospital, 25 miles away, but they said to go to a hospital was against their caste. The child lay moaning so pitifully it wrung my heart, and I pleaded and pleaded with them to let me take him if they would not. Even if his sight could not be saved, something could be done to ease the pain, I knew. But no, he might die away from home, and that would disgrace their caste. Then he is to suffer till he is blind or dead, and I felt half wild with the cold cruelty of it. What can we do? They asked. Can we destroy our caste? Oh, I did blaze out for a moment. I really could not help it. And then I knelt down among them all, just broken with the pity of it, and prayed with all my heart and soul that the Good Shepherd would come and gather the lamb in his arms. I wonder if you can bear to read it. I can hardly bear to write it. But you have not seen the little wasted hands pressed over the eyes and then falling helplessly, too tired to hold up any longer, and you have not heard those weak little wails, and to think it need not have been. But we could do nothing. We were leaving the place next day, and even if we could have helped him, they would not have let us. They had their own doctor, they said. The case was in his hands. As we came away, they explained that one of the boy's distant relatives had died 2 years ago, and that this was what prevented any of them leaving the house, as some obscure caste rule would be broken if they did. Otherwise, perhaps they might have been able to take him somewhere for change of treatment. So there that child must lie in his pain. One more little living sacrifice on the altar of caste. The last thing I heard them say as we left the house was, "Cry softly or we'll put more medicine in." And the last thing I saw was the tightening of the little hands over the poor shut eyes as he tried to stifle his sobs and cry softly. This told one what the medicine meant to him. One of the things they had put in was raw pepper mixed with alum. Is not caste a cruel thing? Those women were not heartless, but they would rather see that baby die in torture by inches than dim with one breath the luster of their brazen escutcheon of caste. This is one glimpse of one phase of a power which is only a name at home. It is its weakest phase, for the hold of caste upon the body is as nothing to the hold it has upon the mind and soul. It yields to the touch of pain sometimes, as our medical missionaries know, but it tightens again too often when the need for relief is past. It is unspeakably strong, unmercifully cruel, and yet it would seem as though the very blood of the people ran red with it. It is in them, part of their very being. This then is caste viewed as a doer. It does strange things, hard things, things most cruel. It is all who fight it are agreed the strongest foe to the gospel of Christ on the Hindu fields of South India.